Hello, welcome back to the channel, you guys. If you're new here, my name is Zach. I'm a former corporate employee turned to freelancer full-time. In the past 2 years, I've made over $600,000 mastering Microsoft Excel. In this video today, it's part of the VBA in 5-minute series. We're going to be learning how to loop through a range and delete rows based on a specific criteria that we provide. All right, so in this specific example, we have April data. Okay, today is April 1st. We're gonna loop through each one of these rows, and if the date in this column is greater than today's date, we wanna delete that record entirely, all right? So let's go ahead and get started. We're gonna go into our April worksheet here, so we'll right click and say View Code, and let's go ahead and write our sub. Sub we'll call Delete Future, open parenthesis, close. As soon as you hit enter, it'll automatically end that end sub, all right? First thing we need to do is get the last row, which we learned about in the first video of this VBA 5-minute series. We learned how to get the last row of our data set, all right? So last row equals active sheet.cells, active sheet.rows.count. We're going to count column A. We're gonna go to the end, Excel up, and we're gonna go to dot row. So that's gonna get us our last row of our data set. Now let's go ahead and set up our for loop. So for x equals, we're actually going to be doing a for loop backwards this time, and I'll explain it here in a minute. So instead of x equals 2, row 2 to our last row, we're going to go from the last row up. So we're going to loop backwards. So for x equals last row to 2, step minus 1, which means we're starting on last row for our loop, and we're going to go upwards, up our rows to row 2. Step minus 1 simply means just loop backwards. Now the reason that we do this is that if you're looping down the range and you delete a row, the deletion of the row, your next for loop iteration will skip a row. Because when you delete, so if let's say we're on row 20 and we need to delete row 20, we delete row 20, row 21 then becomes the next row 20, but our for loop iteration is now going to be on row 21. So we're gonna miss that record. So when we loop backwards, when we delete a record, it doesn't change our range that we're looking at because we're looping up instead of down, all right? So for x equals last row to 2, loop backwards, we're going to be working with the active sheet. So we can say with active sheet, we're gonna say end with. So that means when we use any like dot range, for example, it'll know that dot range is working with the active sheet, all right? So we need to set up our condition. We're gonna say if the dot range of A and X, which is our current loop iteration value, is greater than the date, then we want to take the dot range, the same row, and x dot entire row dot delete, all right? So we're gonna say, oops, missed an E there. So if the value here in our first iteration is going to be down here. So if this value is greater than today's date, we wanna completely delete that row, all right? And then if it's greater than today's date, then delete the entire row, end with, move on to our next iteration. And as always, we're gonna finish with a message box, done, all right? So let's go ahead and run this thing, run. It says done. We go back to our April data, and you can see we are left with 10 rows, all of which are not greater than today's date. They are equal to today's date, all right? So that is it. If you guys can think of anything more specific that you want to be included in these VBA in 5 minutes, please let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to address those things in future videos. Thank you. See you in the next one. Peace.